the timer. Is that what we're talking about? I don't see the map. Oh, there it goes. Okay, timer is timing. Okay, we pick up on part 3 of the introduction to volume 1 of my translation of the New Testament. The title of the book, at this moment anyway, is Seferim, which means the scrolls of the sent ones, or the disciples, if you use an English word. It is a translation of the New Testament. It is not a Christian translation. It was not meant for Christians. It was meant for Jews. But I think Christians will really like it. I don't know why they wouldn't. And I think Jews would be really surprised at the fact that it's completely and wholly Jewish, and those who go around bad-mouthing it and talking bad about it, talking about how wrong it is, have no clue what they're talking about. These are guys that are reading an English translation, which isn't worth the paper it's written on, and they're basing their argument on on a translation by someone who didn't know what they were talking about. So it's a dumb thing to waste your life on, and there are guys out there who have wasted their lives on it. But today we're going to pick up with the idea of faith and faithfulness. By now, most people have heard the parable of the mustard seed, which is found in Matthew 13:31. Christians, and lately even Jews, take this parable to mean that faith, i.e. belief, faith/belief, whichever word you want to use, because that depends on what translation you're looking at. But faith or belief starts off small and grows over time. Eventually, a person's faith or belief, whatever you want to call it, can grow so strong that simply believing that a mountain can be moved into the ocean without physical action can somehow make it happen. If we look at the English word faith in the King James Version of the Bible, we find that it was only used twice. Once in what they call the Old Testament, the Jewish part of the book, if you will. Once in Deuteronomy 32:20 and once in Habakkuk 2:4. But it was used 245 times in the New Testament letters. The vast difference in the use of this word should have been a huge red flag, though somehow it was not. Subsequently, this mistranslation created an altered reality. Yet another alter. How many times have I said that in these last couple of introductory videos? Another altered reality, as well as a new and very false doctrine. Therefore, the words faith and belief have been changed to faithfulness in this translation, which is, of course, the correct interpretation in the New Testament letters and in the 2 aforementioned verses from the Hebrew Bible. In other words, King James should have written faithfulness in, Deuteronomy 32:20 and Habakkuk 2:4. They both should have said faithfulness. Faith was very wrong. So essentially, it didn't show up in the Hebrew Bible, and somehow it shows up in the Jewish New Testament. Come on. And it is Jewish because every man who wrote it was Jewish, all of them. Even the one everybody says that, no, he was a Greek and no, he wasn't. I think I've already talked about that, so I'm going to move on. James 2:20 says, "But will you know, old vain man, that faithfulness without works is a dead issue." And of course, you got to know that the works are the works of the Torah. Hopefully, you're not surprised by that. But will you know, old vain man, that faithfulness, not faith, faithfulness without works is a dead issue. In other words, without works, there's no such thing as faithfulness. What are you faithful to? In short, we cannot have the one without the other. Or put another way, we are not faithful if we do not perform the works in the Torah. In the Second Temple Hebrew world, faithfulness was evidenced by works. In the West, a person can believe in something without acting on it. But to the Jews of that period, we're talking first century CE, no one acted on something unless they believed in it, which, if you think about it, is still true to this day. We just like to. Anyway. In short, the idea of belief separate from action did not exist among the Second Temple Jews. Hopefully that's clear enough. To the Jews of this period, the parable of the mustard seed was not about faith or belief growing over time. It was about our obedience to the Torah growing over time. When we first begin to live according to God's Torah, we perform very few works. And we probably do not perform those works very well. In fact, I'd say, no way do we. No, it's not possible. But over time, as we continue to add the works of Torah to our lives, we will eventually move the mountains of learning and living according to God's Torah. His will is the Torah, His will. We'll move it into the ocean and thus walk across flat, even land, hence free from the mountains. In other words, the hardships of disobedience and ignorance. Those are the mountains that Torah gets us over. The mustard seed has no faith or belief of any kind. Think about it. It doesn't even have a brain. Hello? It does not stand there and say, I think I can, I think I can, I think. In other words, it does not build up enough faith to grow. Instead, the mustard seed only has faithfulness. The only thing a mustard seed has is the faithfulness to grow, and over time, it resembles a great tree for birds to nest in. Let's talk about the Sabbath in the New Testament letters. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 8 says, For if Yeshua would have given them a Sabbath, now yours says rest, right? Because when the translators want it to say something other than what it says, they might play around with the words a little bit. So where they're translating the word Sabbath, instead of writing Sabbath or Shabbat or whatever, which they do from time to time, they change the word to rest so that unless you're a translator, you probably won't catch it. Anyway, for if Yeshua would have given them a Sabbath, would he not have spoken concerning among us? Did you hear those words? The entire 4th chapter of the letter to the Hebrews speaks about the Sabbath being from Friday night sundown until Saturday night sundown. Verse 3 tells us that the Sabbath has been celebrated at this time from the foundation of the hosts, it says. So from the foundation of Judaism, the hosts are the Jews. The point the writer of Hebrews was making is this: if Yeshua had wanted his followers to change the day we celebrate the Sabbath, why on earth did he not mention it to at least one of his disciples while he was with them? Thus, no one at any time or for any reason is allowed to change the day of Sabbath. That's the point in that very simple verse. There are some other notable conclusions that come from this translation. Torah observance is God's lifestyle. Thus, Torah observance was Yeshua's lifestyle. The person called Olympus in Romans 16:15 may actually have been the person called Shammai in the Talmud. I'm pretty sure it's just one and the same person. Because you remember, Constantine gave the order to change all of the names to separate from everything Jewish, and one of the things that they did was change the names. So if you look at what the word Shammai means and look at what the word Olympus means, just look them up. Just Google them. See what happens. Oh, they're going to mean the same thing. Just throwing that out there. The New Testament letters do not excuse men from circumcision. No, they do not. The New Testament letters only refer to the Torah observant as faithful. The New Testament letters only refer to those who are Torah observant as faithful. I don't know if I need to say any more about that, but that's a pretty powerful statement there. When they talk about the faithful in the New Testament letters, they are talking about people who are Torah observant. They are not talking about non-Jews who aren't living by the Torah. No, those people did not exist in that time and place. All right, so how did we get from Yeshua to Jesus? Let's talk about that. The name of the New Testament, Messiah, the Mashiach, the person who was born of a virgin, went around healing the sick and raising the dead, who died on the cross and rose again on the third day. His name was not Jesus. His name was Yeshua. It was not Yehoshua. It wasn't Yahakawa, Yahakawa, or any of that other nonsense that the sacred names baloney came from. By the way, the guy who started that whole sacred names thing, Dr. What's his name? He wasn't a doctor of Hebrew linguistics. He wasn't a doctor of Greek linguistics. He wasn't a doctor of Torah. He wasn't a doctor of anything biblical. He was a dentist. And it makes me mad that somebody like that took off the way, that nonsensical stuff that he taught took off the way it did. Oh, you got to say the name of God. You got to say it right, or you're going to hell. You bunch of Pentecostals. Lord, Lord, Lord. They're not Pentecostals. They just act like them. Just Pentecostal wannabes. They got these people are trying to connect the name Yeshua with the name of Yahweh, and somehow you got to put those two today, and one of them comes out Yahweh or some nonsense like that. It's unbelievable where they went with this stuff. Anyway, I better get off that subject. I know I got myself in trouble already, but it's baloney. It's nonsense. His name was Yeshua. It was not Yehoshua. His name was Yeshua. Yeshua, of course, is the root word you would get Yehoshua from. It's the more proper name. But that'd be like telling a man whose name is Bob that you have to call him Bobby to be proper, even though his name is Bob and not Bobby, right? It's not the same thing as somebody calling someone Bob whose name is Bobby. Let me see how do I say this? Just because Yeshua is the slang, if you will, of Yehoshua, does not mean that his name was Yehoshua. There is no evidence to that at all. The text says his name will be called Yeshua. And of course, it's written in Greek letters, but it's for Yeshua, not Yehoshua. Anyway, so let's go over this little chart. It might help you guys to see. Well, I thought I had a chart here. La 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 la. Ooh, I got it too big. You can't see it. What will I do here? Oh my good, and no wonder I can't see anything. I have my glasses on. Good Lord. Okay, I don't know how to. Oh, this might make it smaller. Oh no. It's still all cut off. That did not help. Well, darn. I bet that happened to the other one too. I didn't even check it. Wow. I don't know how to walk you guys through this to where you can. I really blew it on that one. Let me see. I've got an idea though. Where's the little thingy? Dadgummit. Smacker. All right, let's see. What do we have this thing here? Oh, I wish I could see this better. It's really hard for me to see. Are these images? Yeah, I think they are. Aha! Is there a way to make this bigger? Well, it's weird. It's got a thing to make it bigger, but it's not making it bigger. Well, hopefully this will be big enough for you guys to see. Guys. So let's switch over to, yeah, can you see it? All right, so what I want you to see here is these letters, I have them color-coded. And in Hebrew, we read from right to left. So the very first letter is this little bitty red one. The second letter is this blue one, and the third one is the green one, and the fourth one is the one in cayenne, I think is the name of that color. So this is the Hebrew Yod, Shin, Vav, Ayin. That is how you spell Yeshua in Hebrew. So now if you're going to translate that, you're going to say he is salvation. But if you're going to transliterate that word, you're going to take the letters in English are Y-E-S-H-U-A. My mouse quit moving there. Y-E-S-H-U-A. Yeshua. Yeshua. So now, let's, instead of transliterating that into English, let's transliterate that into Greek. It's the I and whatever that's called, the S-O-U-S, right? That's E-I right there is how we would do it, see? Well, I didn't put the E-I. Anyway, this combination, this diphthong as it's called, you pronounce ye. Then this letter is s, like an S. U, s, it's another S. It's the same thing. It's just the ending version of this letter here. So this is pronounced Yesus. Why would they change Yeshua to Yesus? Well, you got a couple of problems. The Greek language to this very day does not have an SH sound. So they couldn't say Yeshu. They couldn't even make the sh sound in Greek. If people have never tried to make that sound and grow up speaking Greek, to this day cannot make that sound. Josephus was one of the guys who complained about that. He couldn't make that sound. No, that's not Josephus. I got the wrong guy. Josephus would have had it the other way around. Anyway, Yesus. So now if we transliterate the Greek, not the Hebrew, but the Greek into English, we put I-E-S-U-S, right? So since this I was put in place of this I, was transliterated into the English text, this was pronounced Yesus, not Asus, certainly not Jesus or Jesus. It was pronounced Yesus when it was first written in English. Now, long about, I've got 17th century. That's 16. No, that's the wrong century. In the early part of the 1500s. No, that's not right. I'm thinking of the wrong thing. So yeah, it's about the, in the 1500s, is 1611 is when it was printed. It started at the very end of the 1500s, or it happened right around the time of the printing of the New Testament. What they did was they took this I right here and they gave it a little squiggle this way, kind of just a line going down to the left. But it had a bit of a loop. This is a much more pronounced loop than what it had back at the time. But it was this I right here being made into this I, but they gave it a little tail to make it fancy. But even then, in 1611, when the King James came out, it was still pronounced Jesus. Or Yesus, I'm sorry, not Jesus. Then, 150 years later, that letter became this J. And when that J came along, so now we're talking, this is 600 years ago that we get a J and the J sound. Then Jesus became Jesus, which morphed, or slanged, if you will, to Jesus. That's the actual way we go from Yeshua to Jesus. That's how that happened over time. It's a picture. I'm trying to I'm trying to do the wrong thing here. Okay, well, darn, I can't get to. Let me open up this other picture. No, hang on. I got the wrong thing. Hold on, people. I'm having trouble getting the right stuff here. Okay, those are images. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the right place here. Well, getting that in there wrong sure messed everything up. Okay, now let's talk about how the word Yahweh becomes Jehovah or Yahweh, right? Because I actually had a guy from the Middle East tell me that he thought that David's name was Dawid. There are many books, posters, postcards, etc., declaring the names of God. There's a poster right over there that says 77 names of God. 77. However, the Bible only gives one name for God. One, just one. That name is Yahweh. All the names found in the books, posters, postcards, and such are not actually names, but rather attributes of God. I'm about to show you how all of that came about. Yeah, so let me switch over to this image here. Okay. All right. Sorry, it's got a black background. I couldn't do anything about that. This came off an old website thing I had. Gone. So anyway, because it should be white in the background, but it's not. So here we have the name of God. This is that same letter that starts off Yeshua. You have the Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. So I wonder, no, that doesn't work. This Yod, Hey, if you put those two things together, that is masculine. If you put Vav, Hey together, that is feminine. God is both masculine and feminine. So to those of you women who say, God, you don't understand because you're, where do you think you got your emotions and your feelings? I'm just throwing that out there. I know that's what a sexist would say. Or someone who's just telling you the truth. Okay, so let's start off with how his name became Yahweh. We're back into the transliteration. Now, in the time of the Bible, vowel pointing did not exist. There were no vowels in the Hebrew language, none whatsoever. And technically speaking, there still aren't. What you have are vowel pointings, vowel sounds, but you don't have actual vowels. You don't have an actual A, E, I, O, U. And sometimes Y, or however that goes. All right, so they have these pointings, this little funny-looking small T or something, and this funny-looking double dot here, and then here's a dot on top of a dot. You have these different things, vowel pointings, so that you'll know how to make which vowel sound to make. So it's Yah, Y-A-H, Yah, they. So we put the yod here, the Y, there's the little A sound goes here, the hey goes with the H, the Vav goes with the V, the hey goes with the H. Well, the EH. Now here's what happened. In the 1800s, actually as early as the 1700s, but predominantly in the 1800s, the place that you wanted to go if you were going to be might want to go back to me for a second. Donna, go back to me, please. The place you wanted to be, if you wanted to be a true scholar, if you wanted to be the best of the best, the elite of the elite, you went to Germany. Yeah, the late 1700s. I mean, some would argue probably all the way back to the 1600s. I don't know if I would say that. There was too much competition in the 1600s, predominantly coming out of places like Cambridge and Oxford. And, there was some heavy hitters at the time. But you get to the 1800s, everybody knew if you were a top-notch scholar, you were coming out of Germany. Well, in Germany, they have this letter called a W in their language, and it makes the W sound, right? No, it doesn't. It makes the V sound. V. Do you drive a Volkswagen or do you drive a Volkswagen? Wagen. It's a Volkswagen, I think. Anyway, the W makes the V sound. So when they transliterated, let's go back and look at this now. When they transliterated, they took the yod and they put it to the Y, and they put the hey and they put it to the H, and they put the vav with the W because it made the V sound. So in that time, the W first came along on the scene. Its name was pronounced Yahweh. It was not pronounced Yahweh. But over time, as things got further and further away from scholars, as basically the church broke down and people stopped having to learn Hebrew and Greek and stuff like that, people could just buy themselves a license to be a preacher for 35 cents in a mail order catalog. This happened. And I'm serious about that. I'm not making that up. Way was never God's name. It should never have been pronounced that way. And look how many books that's in now. And look how many scholars, you couldn't see me do the air quotes, say Yahweh. So now let's move over to the other side and see how that same name became Jehovah. So this, what they did was they took the vowel pointings out of the word Adonai, which I think would be more closer to this. But once you start changing from the certain letters inside a word, that changes the vowel pointings. So if you look at Adonai, it won't make sense to you. But it's because once the pointings are taken out of one word and put into this, because it starts with the yod, the pointings change. But they are, in fact, the pointings from the word Adonai. So here you have Yeh, Ho, and then they use the word again, Va, which is as nonsensical as it gets. That's really, really, really dumb. But that's what they had to do to come up with that. It's nonsensical, but it's what they did. They used this one letter as both a vowel and a consonant. The only place you're going to find that happening is in the Bible because, well, they needed it to fit their narrative, so they made it fit their narrative. Anyway, so what we're doing here is we're taking the yod, we're putting Y-E, the darker E for this double dot thing here. The hey, we put an H here. And then the O, we're using I didn't know what to do. This vav here is the O sound, and then the vav is used again for the V sound, and then the little T thing is used for the A, and the hey is used for the H. Well, 600 years ago, the Y in our alphabet got replaced with the J. You guys don't, a lot of people don't know this, but the alphabet that we have now is not the alphabet that we had 600, 700, 800 years ago. It has changed over. The Y it made I think the long E sound, like like the I in machine. It was essentially an I, not a Y. And then when it got this little squiggle added to the end of it, it eventually became a J sound. It started out a Y sound, but it eventually became a J sound. And then the Y got the Y sound. But it wasn't always that way. This is just something that occurred over time because people like to play with their language and their words. Oh, that's wild. I did not know how I was doing that. Okay, let's see now. Yeah. Okay, I've gone through all of that. Okay, we better say some of these. I've kind of said some of this, but I don't want to miss anything. Huh? Okay. Okay, the vowel pointings from the word Adonai, as I said earlier. Of course, now in parentheses, I have a term of reverence found over 400 times in the Tanakh or Old Testament writings. The Yehudim developed an aversion. The Jews developed an aversion to speaking the proper name of God around the 1200s CE. Does that surprise anyone that they developed this problem with saying God's name in the Dark Ages when the sages took over? You know, the men who didn't even speak the Hebrew language, had never been in Israel, and knew literally nothing about Hebrew, custom, culture, history. They made it up. And they were the ones that decided, oh, we can't pronounce God's name. They began substituting the vowel symbols from Adonai. The idea was to cause the reader to mispronounce the proper name of God if they happen to inadvertently read his name out loud. This practice of mispronouncing the name of God and or not pronouncing it at all, why does that sound weird to me? They wouldn't pronounce his was born out of superstition and fear, and eventually spawned other related practices such as writing the word God as G minus D. What? Hyphen. Looks like a minus to me. G hyphen D. Should you show that to him? Or not? The belief was that God's name was so holy that it can only be spoken once a year by the high priest. It was also feared that if a person spoke God's name while in the wrong mood or frame of mind, they would then be taking God's name in vain. God inspired the writers of the Tanakh. That's the Hebrew Bible. That's the thing that the Christians so wrongly call the Old Testament. But God inspired the writers of that book to write his proper name almost 8,000 times. So eliminating God's name is to make his name void. To make his name void is to take his name in vain. The very thing that these sages tried to do to keep people from as the Hebrew says, taking God's name to vain or taking it for vain. It doesn't say taking it in vain. But the very thing that they were trying to do to keep people from doing that very thing is exactly what they caused. If you will not say God's name, you are taking his name to vain. You are making his name vanity. It's a bad idea. Let's talk about what sin is and what sin is not. If you ask 100 different people, what is sin? You will receive a myriad of answers ranging from the tangible to the absurd. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. You ever heard that one before? I may have mentioned it once or more. Whoever commits sin transgresses also the Torah, for sin is Torah, rebellion. Anything that violates the law found in the Torah is sin. Or put another way, anything we do that the Torah says we cannot do is sin. And anything we don't do that the Torah tells us we must do is sin. That is the sum total of what sin is and what sin is not. Further, if the Torah does not call something a sin, it is not a sin. No matter how offended you are by it, it is not a sin. In short, the only sin that exists to the children of God is contained in the Torah. So if the Torah does not tell you that this is a sin, it is not a sin. And if the Torah tells you it is a sin, it is a sin. And no, you don't get to do it because the law passed away. Because it didn't. Christians have come to think of themselves as sinners, saved by grace, hoping to win that potato race. Oh, sorry. They have resolved themselves to the idea that they cannot live without sin. So much so that some, perhaps even most, have stopped trying, while others struggle not to live in sin daily. While it is true that no one is without sin, it is not true that we cannot live without sinning. That is not true. That is not true. In fact, God intended for us to live without sinning from the very beginning. That was the plan. Still is the plan, because God never changes. It's simple. Do what the Torah commands and don't do what it condemns. God didn't give his people a law they could not live by. God is not vindictive. He is not sadistic. He is a God filled with love and compassion for his people. And he gave us a law that we must live by. Let's talk about the idea of law, pitting the law against grace. The King James Version of the Bible renders John 1:17 as follows. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. This, I couldn't help myself. This verse leads many Christians to believe that the Tanakh, the Old Testament as they call it, passed away. Yeshua died on the cross, and that grace and that truth came by Yeshua. So the idea that we live by grace and not the law is nothing more than an excuse to live a lifestyle of sin. However, a correct translation of the Greek text will shed an unexpected light on this matter, because it actually says, for the Torah, through Moshe, the guy who chiseled it in stone and brought it down the mountain, broke the first set, made a new set, wrote it on lambskin after he did all of that through Moshe, was given that grace and truth through Yeshua Mashiach would come to pass. It's because he wrote the law that Mashiach came to pass, that grace and truth came to pass, because the Torah is the light of the world. The Torah is life. Choose life. If you choose not to follow the Torah, you're choosing death and cursing. Choose life. Hope you're getting the reference there. Yeshua did not come to unravel, or shall we say destroy, the Torah, the law as it's called in the King Jimmy, or the prophets. He didn't come for any of that. He said he didn't come for any of those things. He came to consummate, or fulfill, as they use, as the translators use, because they didn't like that consummation word. Matthew 5:17, if you want to look it up. The Tanakh tells us that God divorced the Yehudim. You can find that in Jeremiah 3:8, and you can find it in Hosea, or Hosea, if you want to say it right, 2:2, or Yirmiyahu, if you want to say his name right. Yeshua came to restore the marriage covenant between himself and the Jews. Yeah, I said himself and the Jews. I didn't say his father and the Jews. We probably should talk about legalism and bondage at this point, right? Because to accuse God of to say that the law is legalistic and bondage, is legalism and bondage, is to accuse God of being the author of legalism and bondage. Try to work your way out of that box. Deuteronomy chapter 30 opens with an admonition from God to his people to live according to his Torah. If they do not, they and their children will be cursed. I have translated verses 10 through 15 as follows. If you will hear the sound of Yahweh your God, to keep his commandments and statutes, which are written in this book of the Torah, his commandments and his statutes are written in this book of the Torah. If you turn to Yahweh your God with all your heart and all your soul, for this commandment which I give to you this day is not hidden from you. It's not hidden from you. Neither is it far away. It is not in heaven, that you should say, who will go up to heaven and bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it. And neither is it beyond the sea, that you should say, who will pass over the sea and bring it to us, that we might hear and do it. For the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. There is no legalism or bondage found in the Torah. God did not give his people a law that could not be followed. God gave us all a standard by which we could live. A standard, a path, a way, as it's called in the Bible, by which we are to follow. Christians are adamant that the Bible teaches them that the law is legalism, bondage, and works. Some, if not most, are completely convinced that we are no longer under the law but under grace. But the phrase, the curse of the law, is used idiomatically in the Bible. The meaning is simple. Those who violate the laws contained in the Torah are subject to the curses. The punishments laid out in the Torah, the curses. The phrase, live by grace, is also used idiomatically and means to live by the laws contained in the Torah. Yes, to live by grace was a Hebrew idiom that meant you lived by the laws that were written in the Torah. If you did that, you were living by grace. If you were trying to live that way, but you were messing up and not quite doing it right, then you're falling into the curses, right? That's what you need the grace for, to get you beyond. Since Christians don't know that these are idioms, they have created a whole new religious reality. Here we go with another one that is virtually impenetrable. I can't talk to most Christians about this. I can't reason with them. The teaching that we are no longer under the law but under grace is true to the degree that the idiomatic phrase means as long as we live by the laws found in the Torah, we are not under the judgment or curse, but under the grace it gives us to live free from the bondage of the curse. We are no longer under the law from which, I said that wrong. If we are no longer under the law, from which law are we set free? Can we now kill? Can we now steal or murder? Is helping our neighbor get his ox out of the ditch actually legalism? Or is it basic human kindness? You see, the law of God is nothing more than a path we follow, a path of human kindness and interaction that does no harm and rights every wrong that it possibly can. Why should anyone want to live in a place free of something like that? The answer is simple: rebellion. Well, that's all I have for you guys. Going back to this camera here. I hope that to go into print here in the next few months, and we're going to basically print off just one on my printer at home and bind it in some way, probably in a 3-ring binder, because it is 1,000 pages, so it's a big book. And we'll send those out to the people, our group. And then I want you to mark them up, any misspelling or mistake that you perceive to be there. Some of them won't really be mistakes, but they will look like mistakes, trust me. Go ahead and mark them up. That's okay with me. Because some of them might be, and I may have just missed it, because it's one of those, it really is a mistake, but it just looks like it's a mistake, but I didn't think it was a mistake. Yeah, I don't get in my head. It's a scary place. So anyway, I want you to mark those up, and then I'll go through one last little cleanup. We'll actually have them turned into books. I will sign them personally to all of you, and you will all get a copy of that book, provided you send us a $400,000 donation. I'm just kidding. We are going to have somebody to help us pay for the printing and the binding of the book, because that's pretty expensive with a book that's almost 1,000 pages. That costs a lot of money. So you're going to have to help me with that. But beyond that, whatever that costs, we'll split that up between us. And we'll get that paid for, and you guys will get a copy of it. I hope you enjoyed these last 3 messages. Shalom v'shalom, y'all.
The blessing, Be'ivrit. Yevarecha Yahweh beyish meracha. Ya'er Yahweh panai v'lecha v'hunecha. Yisa Yahweh panai v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate toward you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.